Yeah, so thanks for coming tonight. Tonight I would like to talk about tools and workflows that you can put in place inside your startup or your startup to be if you plan to launch something. That will give you also ideas if you work in a big company and you're frustrated with the way things work in your company. These are some tools that you maybe want to push to your management, I don't know, so that you can work better. So I will talk about my experience at Wagon as a CTO. And first, let me put the context in place. I'm talking about startups. I don't know if you've read this book, Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I read it 5 years ago, and everything is here. Basically, it just defines what's a startup and what's not a startup, because a lot of people believe they are doing a startup when they are not. So what's a startup? So a startup is it's an organization to search a business model. And the business model should be repeatable and scalable. So once you've found the business model, you're no longer a startup. So Le Wagon is not a startup anymore because we found a business model, because we just, it's a straightforward business model. You want to attend the 9-week bootcamp, but you just have to pay for it, okay? But if you're an organization without any business model, you're still a startup, okay? It doesn't mean that when you cease to be a startup, that you should not use any tool I'm talking about tonight, of course, but just to make it clear that we are talking about that. So I'm going to talk about Le Wagon tools. So it's not the best method to do stuff. It's a way to do stuff which works. If you have another way, it's fine. Okay, I'm not like preaching anything, just telling you my experience. We are talking about this project, which is a simple project. It's Le Wagon's website, but it's useful for us because it will explain what we do, and basically it's where you can apply. Okay, so it's not the most complicated stuff we've built at Le Wagon, of course. We've built more complex stuff, but for the sake of the workshop, I'm going to stick with that. So we have a website, and we want to do some changes to the website. We want to change some code and put it in production and have a life cycle of the product. First thing you need to do when you deal with code in your team is to do some versioning. Versioning means that you need a way to go back. You need a way to say, okay, the code is correct, I want to do a checkpoint, and I can move on. If you don't have those kind of versioning in place, you can lose everything. You cannot share your code, you cannot collaborate. So you need a tool which will give you something like that. Do you have any idea what kind of tool can give you that? What do you use if you have GitHub? Yeah. So GitHub is for that, but if you don't use GitHub, if you're not in a small company, do you have any idea of, software program which will do something like that? I'm sorry? Pivotal? So Pivotal is a project management tool, right? It's not for storing information, like documents. Say you have a Word document, and you want to store versions of it. How do you do it? Like you copy-paste the file and you rename it, right? Okay, so it will work, but it's like not so nice. Do you know Dropbox? Okay, so Dropbox does that. For every file, you have a way to go back in time. You can right-click and say, I want to go back to the previous version. For the code, we need to use a tool, which is GitHub. So GitHub is like it's a company hosting a website on which you can view your code and collaborate with other developers. And I will show you examples of how we can use GitHub tonight. So let's put the vocabulary. On GitHub, you have repositories. A repository is a project where you can see the code. Here, it's a screenshot of the repository for the website of Le Wagon. So www.lewagon.com. Sorry?
Is that public?
It is public. if you want to go and look for source code of Le Wagon, you can go to this URL and look at it. So how to read the repo? That's what we are going to do. You can look for some information. This is what I like to look when I stumble upon a new repository on GitHub. It's contributors, so people actually working on the code. Commits, so the commits are the checkpoints of the code, and the code itself, obviously. So let's do that for our repository. So we'll go to github.com/lewagon/www. Okay. And let's look at this information. So for the contributors, you can click on this link here. So you can see that 8 people have contributed to the code. You can see that we worked a lot in November last year, and not so much now. You can see profiles of developers. So this is me. This is Thomas, one of our developers. This is Boris, the CEO and the crazy aggressive Frenchman, as Edward said. There's Romain, another partner, and like small contributions from students and a teacher and marketing guy at Le Wagon. So you can see who worked on the code. You can see commits. So commits are the checkpoints. So you can see we did like 688 commits, and for each commit, for each save, you can see what's been done. So who did it, what's been done, and you can click on a change to view what has changed. So let's take the latest one. Okay, this one. This is something I did 4 days ago. And basically, I added some images, which are loading. Okay. And I changed some code as well, not just images, here. Okay, so I touched the code. So in green, you will see what's been added, and in red, you will see what's been removed. Okay, so thanks to this tool, you can really go back in time, view every history since the very beginning of the project, like 1 year ago, and you can, for instance, when you are looking for a bug, you have a bug and you don't know where it came from, this kind of history can help you. Okay? So it's public. We don't, I mean, there's no value to hide the code of such a project for us. So we just share it with the world, and we didn't get any contributions from people we don't know. But when you do open source and you put your code on GitHub, sometimes you have a complete stranger using your code, finding a bug, and fixing it and giving back some code to fix it, which is really, really great. I mean, it happens sometimes. So here, it's a website for marketing. Well, it's a marketing tool, so we don't really get those kind of updates, but you can get it. So this is GitHub, and let's take an example of what we can do. So we are going to talk about a workflow that GitHub has defined and that we use, using branching and pull requests. So let's say, so tonight I'm going to change something on our website. On our website, we have a blog section at this page. And on this blog page, we are listing, so we are listing every Medium post written by a member of the staff. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 articles, okay? And tonight I'm going to add something here because another people in our staff has written something on Medium. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. This is really simple, but it's an example of a feature to implement on a product. So I have this feature I want to implement. How do I do as a developer inside the project? I will use branching and pull request. So how does it work? Here you can imagine you have a line, a straight line of time where you will get commits and changes. And basically, you have like the main line, which is called master. Every developer who wants to change something in the code they won't change it in the main line, which is like You don't touch it, but they will create a branch where they can do the changes. So basically, it's a bit like if you've seen the movie Back to the Future. At some point, they go back in time, and they change something, and so they change the main line, right? So it's a bit like that, okay? So I create a line, and I will do some commits here. I will change the code, and at some point, I'm okay with my changes. I want to get a review. I want somebody in my team, a developer or someone else, to review my code and get some feedback. And this part is really important because if you have a team of, let's say, 3-4 developers who don't collaborate, who don't share their experience on the code, you create code where you can recognize style. For instance, I can open a file and I will say, oh, this is Max who did the code, or this is Thomas. And you don't want that. You want to have the code as if it was written by one single person. So you want to share and to have some reviews around the code. I used to work at Google, where they used to have like thousands of engineers. And when you looked at the code, it was like one man wrote it. It was like perfect. Because they had this process in place where they had a strict review process, and everything had to follow a coding style. So this review part is really important. So basically, you can see that there are some chatting going on because you get some feedback. So for instance, my variable doesn't have a good name, so I have to change it. You do some more commits. And in the end, your code is great. Everybody loves it. And you want to merge it back to the main line, to the master, and move on to the next feature, to the next bug. OK? Makes sense? So, yeah. The part here where you discuss, on GitHub it's called the pull request. And how does a pull request look? It looks like that. So let's review this one. Here it's a pull request I did because I wanted to add on the city page of the website a Google map with an icon where the school is. Okay? So I opened a pull request with a screenshot of what I did because it's easier to understand for my colleague what I did with a screenshot rather than looking at the code, right? So here you can all understand what I did. I added this map. And what my colleague have done, they went to the changed files and they looked at the code. So they looked at JavaScript here. They looked at some CSS code, and they looked at some HTML. Okay? So they look at the code, and maybe they find a mistake or something they don't like, so they can comment on the code. And what is nice with this tool is that, for instance, if I don't like this line, I can click here and add a comment directly on the line. And that's what we do every day as developers. We review code from our colleagues, and we comment the code. And we can have really long discussions for just one line. And it's fine, because you really want your code to have the fewest bugs possible and to have the best coding style. So let's take an example in this pull request. If I go back to the conversation tab, here, so Boris, so he did, can you move this code block to a dedicated JavaScript file? So I said, OK, etc. So each time I have a comment, I can do a new commit and push. OK? So here there was another comment, etc., etc., etc. In the end, Boris was happy. You can see it. And so we can consider the feature is almost done. And it's time for merging back to master, back to the main line. So here it has already been merged, but you get the idea. You need this step. And for GitHub, it's just a button. We will demonstrate that. So let's implement something. On GitHub, we have an issue tracker where you put bugs and feature requests. And for instance, Romain asked me to do some work. He asked me to add this Medium post to the list of posts on the blog page. OK? So this is a really simple feature. but I will do every step I talked about so that you really understand how it goes. So what do I do? So I go to my terminal, and I will create a branch. The first step, to not to work in master, but to work in a different line. And every developer works in a different line. So I will create the branch and calling it add medium post. Okay. Now I will open the code and change some code. I already have the code open. So what I need to change here, I have 4 medium posts, and I need to add one. So it's really straightforward. So I need to take this part of the URL and add it to the array. So I can choose where I want to put it. So let's say we put it in the second position. Okay? So I change this code, and now I need to do a snapshot. So I go back to the terminal, and I do my snapshot, and I said, okay, added post. So I did my snapshot right now, and I will push my changes to GitHub so that it can get reviewed by my colleagues. So if I go back to GitHub, on the main repository page, you can see that GitHub has detected that I did some work inside another branch. I can also go to the graph page to show you. Okay, here it is. In black, it's the main line. In blue, you can see some branch on which we work some features or some bugs. And here, we have the new branch we've just created. Right now, it lives on its own. It has not yet been merged back to master. Okay? So I can create my pull request, and I can say to Boris to review it. So here, it's like sending an email to your colleague. You can explain what you did, you can attach files, you can upload a screenshot, etc. You will be notified, and we'll have to go to GitHub to do it. So I will play Boris' part, because I'm not sure he's checking his email right now. Anyway, so what Boris will do is go to this page and review the change. And if he's not happy, again, he can just comment on the line and talk to me. Okay? So let's say he's happy. Now we have this button, which is going to merge back in master the change, which means that I'm done with my feature. Okay, it will close the issue. So how are we doing? Do you have any question at this point? Yeah.
Is it good practice to make a separate branch for each feature, or might you do multiple features in one branch?
So every time you have a new feature or new bug to work on, you do a new branch. Okay. Yeah. It's one branch for one feature.
What if it's a really tiny change?
Yeah. So maybe you just have a typo or something as simple as that. The best practice is to really respect the workflow for everything. And sometimes, there's the rule. And here you see a black commit. This one, it's mine. So I didn't respect the workflow for this one. Okay, so again, it's like you have a workflow so that you can share your code and get reviews, etc. But sometimes you don't bother because it's so simple and so straightforward that maybe you can just bypass it. Depends on your team, on the discipline of your team, and how flexible you want to be. So here I was flexible with myself. Yeah.
A little inception, but would you ever have branches within branches?
Yeah, you can.
Multiple features being built in at once.
Yeah, you can. Sometimes you don't want to release. So sometimes you need a lot of changes to release something. So you will branch development branch, create a development branch, and merge on it. And when it's ready, merge it back to master. So you can create branches from branches. Yeah.
And if someone's saying, "Don't touch my branch," touch my pull request, but don't touch my branch.
So basically,
How can someone else touch the branch that you've made?
so I created the branch, I created the pull request. Anybody in the team can comment. Actually, anybody in the world, because it's open source. You can comment if you want. But they don't change the code. If you want to change the code, you have to have push access to the repository. So only the team can do it. And usually, you just have one developer per branch. It's really rare to have several developers in one specific branch, because you can mix it up. Yeah. Sometimes, if you have a developer who takes vacation, you can, take the branch and go on, but don't work on the same branch. So back to the slides. So what we want to do now is to basically is to deploy our feature. So we want to deploy what we just changed. Something I didn't do, which I should have done earlier, is to check if my change is working locally on my computer, obviously. Because I changed the code and I was so confident it works. Let's check it works. So I will launch our website on my computer and go locally on the page. So let's do that. It's /blog. So here I'm running the Rails server on my machine, and I want to check if it's got added. So this is this one, and it works. Okay, I didn't break the page, so everything is good. Anyway, so we want to deploy, we want to put that in production, so we want that people going to /blog page see the new blog. At Le Wagon, we use this service. Do you know it? Who doesn't know it? Okay. So basically, it's a platform. It's a platform as a service. It's something where you can send your code, and it will host you somewhere in the cloud, so that people can visit your website. Because when you want to run a website, you have to have the code running somewhere. It can be on your machine. People can just request web pages from your machine, but it means that your machine has to always stay on, which is not really the goal of this kind of workstation. So usually what you do is like you have a server somewhere in a data center, and your code is running on this server. So 15 years ago, you had to buy a server from Dell, get it shipped to your office, put some configuration on it, put your software on, grab a taxi, go to the data center, put the server in the rack, etc. So it was painful. Now we have what we call the cloud. So what's the cloud is just computers in the data centers. And you can just virtually grab any machine you want, put your code on it, and run it. And it can be really, you can dispose from machines. So for instance, if your code is running on one machine and you know you're going to be on TV tonight, you can say, okay, now I want my code to be run on 100 machines. And it will cost you like £5. Because after tonight, you can just discard all the machines. That's the power of the cloud. So Heroku it's a cloud provider for running your code. In the GitHub flow, you have one rule, which is really important, and you have to respect. Everything which is in master can be deployable at any time, which means that when you merge the code from branches to master, you need to be sure that the code is working correctly. Okay, so that's the rule we want. I don't know how you work with developers, or if you have like a release cycle, or if you have versions, etc. But at Le Wagon, we don't have any. I mean, as soon as the code is ready, we just push it to production. We don't do like release day or V1, V2, V3. We just push it, which is great because you don't get stocks. I mean, you don't get code sitting on your computer and not being used by your users. So we just deploy anytime it's ready. So you want to deploy every time there is a pull request which has been merged. And basically what's going to be done is, instead of pushing your code to GitHub like we did before, we're just going to push it to Heroku, and it's going to be a deployment. You just send your code to Heroku and it will run it, which is really great. That's something you can do manually, obviously, but that's also something you want to automate. Basically, I just want to click merge on GitHub, and 5 minutes later, I want my code in production. And that's what we are going to do. We want a tool which automatically deploy every change to Heroku. Okay? So basically, that's how you set it up in Heroku. I'm just passing it because that's fine. This button is going to be your deploy button. So on GitHub, on the pull request, so this one should be green now. Great. So this button, if I click this button, in a few minutes, it will be on production. Okay? So let's do it. Okay. So what's happening? Basically, it will send a notification to Heroku, which will grab the code from GitHub and deploy it. Okay? And that's really nice just to be able to deploy code just by clicking a button in the web UI. I don't know, again, I don't know really how you work with developers, but if the release cycle is painful, but here it's just a button. Okay? So, with this kind of process, you can ship really often. You don't have code doing, you don't have code implemented for nothing. As soon as it's ready, it's for your users. But there are some problems with that. Because if you deploy, I don't know, 10 times a day, maybe sometimes something will break. Okay? And we are a small company. Facebook used to break the API every 2 weeks. It's like 5 years ago when you were a developer and working with the Facebook API. All your stuff blown up every 2 weeks because they changed stuff without telling you before. And yeah, I mean, that's their way of doing, because they were saying, okay, we move fast, and if you want to stay on top with us, you have to move fast with us. And again, it's great for building Facebook, but if you want to send people on Mars or on the moon, you don't want to do that, obviously. If you want to build a car which will take you from point A to point B, you don't want to do that as well. If you're building software for for banks, obviously, you don't want to do that as well. Okay, so what I'm talking about tonight is for startups. It's for something where, life or money or stuff which cannot be repaired easily is involved. Okay? Again, Facebook is just a social network. It's a big social network. It's like the biggest ad company ever. It's like the biggest ad agency. They can break stuff. They won't kill anybody. Okay? So what if I broke something? What if I clicked on the merge button and something has been broke? What can I do? So for instance, I mess up with the code and I get an error on the blog page. Yeah, you can just roll back. You can just roll back. So when you have this kind of tools, you will have a button to do the opposite of what you did. If you have a button to deploy, you have a button to roll back. So here it is. It's like here on Heroku, I have all the versions being deployed, and I have a link where I can click on it, and it will revert the code back to where it was before. Okay? So in fact, you don't have to be scared to put your code in production. A lot of teams are scared. And I know that I used to be in teams like that. Because if you deploy stuff and it breaks, you just go back. Okay? So the process, if you break something, someone sends an angry email, oh, you broke this stuff, etc. You don't panic. You go to this interface. You click on rollback. You make sure that it's okay now. And then you start investigating the bug. But you are at peace of mind because you know that it's not broken anymore. Okay? So how can we prevent breaking things? Because we can. We can do that with testing. What I did before was to launch the server and to go locally on the website and check manually if it was working. Let's say, I don't know, I do that. Will it break? Yeah. Okay. So here what I did, I forgot to put the last quote, single quote. Something I could have done, a mistake I could have done. So locally, when I reload my page, I see an error. Okay? So it's quite painful because you have to do it by hand, but this is really the bare minimum you need to do as a developer. If you're a developer and you change some code and you just don't test what you changed, you're not doing something professional. Okay? Old school teams have a QA department. You know, it's like there's someone coding and there's someone testing. For me, it doesn't really make sense because if you're a developer and you don't test your code, you're not really doing the job. So testing the code should be part of the developer job as well. So here I did my part. I tested the code manually, and I can fix it and make sure the website works again. So imagine you have like a website with a lot of features, like thousands of features. You make a change. How can you make sure that one change won't break a feature somewhere else? What's the first way?
Automated testing.
I'm sorry?
Automated testing, yeah?
Yeah, you want to automate. If you don't have automated testing, you have to run the website and go through every web page, every feature, and check by hand if it works, which is painful. So what you want to do is to write some code which will do that for you. So here it's a screenshot of a test code I wrote to make sure that this page on the right works. This page is really important for us. It's the page where you apply for the Wagon. So if it doesn't work and we lose application, it's a bit of a problem. Okay? So here's this test. What it does, basically, it just goes to this website, to this page, fill in the form, click on the apply button, and make sure that a new entry has been inserted in the database. That's it. That's something I used to do manually when I changed the code. So I used to run the website, go to the apply form, and apply as a student. And at some point, I got tired of doing that by hand, and I wrote some code. Okay? Again, the best practice should be you should write code for every feature. You should write tests for every feature. Sometimes I'm just lazy, I don't do it. Okay? So then you run your code, and you get something like that. So I can run it if you want here. So you just launch a command. It will read the test code on your machine, and you will have green or red lines. So you will have red lines when something has been broken, and green when it's okay. So here you can see that I have a test for the alumni page, test for the apply process, and test for other web pages. Okay? I'm not testing everything on the website. I'm testing what's really important. You have to make a trade-off between the time you need to write tests and the importance of a feature, I would say. Okay? Does it make sense? So that's something you mentioned earlier. What we want is to make sure that every time there is a new commit, every time there is a new branch, the tests are being run, and you get a feedback inside the pull request if you broke something. Because again, if you have to manually launch a command on your computer, you have to remember to do it every time, and developers are really lazy, and they will forget this kind of process. So we use something which is called Travis, which runs the code for us and gives feedback directly inside the branch. So here you can see there is like this green tick, which means that our commit didn't break anything. So it ran the code of our commit and told GitHub, okay, this commit is clear. That's why we got the green merge button. If the test is not working, the merge button is red. So you get a visual feedback that if you merge this code, it's broken code. So you will deploy broken code. Okay? So those kind of integrations are really nice in the tools. and you can add more stuff in here. You can get metrics on the code or other information. Yeah, I don't have example with code broken, but so if we go to this this web page on Travis, yeah, I think I have a screenshot of that. Okay, so this is Travis CI. Basically, you have one line per commit. Each time I do a commit and I push my code, Travis will check if my tests are still running, and you get green lines if it works and red lines, obviously, if it doesn't. So you have a history of what you're doing. And you get email notification, which is nice. Sometimes I just work on a feature. I push my branch before going home so that I don't lose my work. If I get my computer stolen, at least the code is on GitHub. And 5 minutes later, I will receive an email telling me that the build has been broken, which means that currently my branch is breaking the test. So you get notifications early on as a developer, even if you didn't run on your machine the break. Okay, makes sense? Yeah.
Do you need to tell that tool what to test? Is it what you said earlier?
Yeah.
Or is it going to test automatically?
So as a developer, you need to write two types of code. You need to write the code for the feature, obviously, and you need to write the test which tests the code of the feature. And that way the tools can exercise the test and test your code is correct. But it doesn't do it automatically. Yeah.
And relative to actually building whatever the feature is, how much time would writing the test take? Is it like 80%, 20%?
That's where it's really hard to answer. That question is really hard to answer because it depends on the project, it depends on the team, if the team is trained on test or not. Usually, in companies where developers don't have a lot of power, management will just say, skip the test, we need to ship it right now. And they need more features and more features and more features. And what you do when you ship features without any test is that you create technical debt. And this technical debt in the beginning is really small. But as time goes, it grows, and at some time it kills the project because there's too much buggy code without any test. So in the long run, writing code obviously takes more time to ship features. Maybe it will take twice the time, something like that. But you're making sure that the project code is correct and can grow. Yeah.
Who should monitor the testing?
We
Should we monitor the testing? It should be the CTO or it should be other individual who write that specific.
You mean who's like
Should it be centralized?
pointing figures if you don't do the testing?
I'm non-technical, so that's my question.
Yeah. It's up. If I build a feature, I'm responsible for building the test for this feature as well, at least in small startups. Because in a startup, you don't have enough budget to have dedicated testing people. So usually, when you are just one or two developers in a team, you have to write the test. And it's the CTO's job to make sure that people write tests with their code, obviously. Okay? But again, when you are short in terms of employees or engineers, you cannot really test 100% if you want to go really, really fast, but at least test the critical part. That's what I did with the website. I tested the application process. And I didn't test the blog part. Because if the blog fails, okay, it's a shame. I will get an email tomorrow because someone will say I cannot access the blog anymore, and I will fix it. But I mean, it's fine. If I break the application process, and for 3, 4, 5 days, we don't get any application anymore, we won't know if it's because the tool is broken or if it's people don't apply anymore. And that's where it's really important to have testing in place, to be confident that your tool is working. Yeah.
What do you think of test-driven development, where you write a failing test, you develop a feature, and
Yeah, so one way of making sure that you have tests is to do what we call TDD, so testing driven development, where you first write tests and then you write the code. So you write tests, you make sure they fail, you write code until the test is green. So it's a really touchy topic because it's close from religion at this point. I mean, some people advocate and just say you have to do it, this is the only way. I'm more in favor of pragmatism. TDD is really nice when you are building something like a library or building code which is going to be called by somewhere else, by other code. Here we are building website, so you get visual feedback of what you're building. So you build HTML and you refresh the web page and you see what you do. So you're already doing some tests with your eyes, in fact. When you do code which is run in a terminal without any visual feedback, to make sure it works, you need tests. And it's easier to write tests first and then doing the code. So in fact, I would say that I do TDD when it's easier for me to do TDD, when it helps me, actually. And I don't do it 100% of the time. Because I also like to do some code changing and get feedback from the browser. I prefer to have this workflow, you know, to iterate, to build my web page. And when I'm happy with my web page, I will write some code to make sure the application form works. Make sense? Okay. So actually in Heroku, you have a setting. So when you set the automatic deploy, you can also tick a box and make sure that the tests are green before deploying. So I recommend that you tick this box, because otherwise you will deploy broken code. Okay, it's like a safety net. So now I think we can go to the website and check if it actually works. Yes, it did. So here I'm live on production, and I have this new article, and I didn't run any command. I just hit the merge button 10 minutes ago. Okay? So what we have now is called continuous delivery. It means that everything is integrated, so you write code, you write test, and your code gets pushed as soon as it's ready and the tests are green. And so I don't know, again, if this will scare you. It depends on your team. It depends if you're a developer. I used to work in teams where we shipped code every 3 months. So during 3 months, we wrote a lot of code, but nothing happened for the users. And then after 3 months, we ship everything. And there's like 1 month of hell because a lot of bugs we didn't see before happen. A lot of corner cases for the users, so angry users for 1 month. Then you get 2 months, okay. And again, you ship big stuff. So if you push code every hour, if you push new features every day, even if you break something, you just break small parts of the application. If you push everything every 3 months, the chances are that you're going to break a lot of stuff. So doing versioning and pushing and releasing every 3 months, it made sense 20 years ago when you had to print a DVD, or even before, like a CD-ROM or a diskette, and send it to your customers. Because if you had a bug on the DVD version, you cannot do anything. But now we have SaaS, software as a service. Gmail, for instance. Do you know the version number of Gmail that you use every day? No, you don't, but it changes every few minutes. Google is always doing changes on Gmail. Now companies own the infrastructure, they own the software, and they own the hosting. A tool like Salesforce is hosted at Salesforce. It's not hosted on your company. So they can change the code whenever they want. Okay, so they can fix bugs really, really faster than before when you had to print DVDs and have something like Windows Update to fix bugs. Okay? So now we can do that with web. Now everything is web-based, so you can always change stuff. So 2007, Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, and so people could build apps. And do you know the development process for an iPhone app? How you change the code, how you release it? Sorry? Yeah, you use Xcode, but what happens once your developer pushes to Apple? Yeah, you have to wait, like at least 7 days. So if you release something and there's a bug, you will have to wait at least 7 days until you can have a new version in the Apple Store. So they have like this emergency request in place. You fill a form saying, oh, please push it now. And you can maybe use it like once or twice in a lifetime. So it's like a golden ticket, I don't know. So yeah, if you're a big company, maybe you can negotiate with them, but if you are a small developer, you have to wait. And if you release before Christmas, basically they shut down you during 2 weeks at Christmas. And if you have a bug just before Christmas, you will have to wait like 3 weeks in January. So don't release in December an iPhone app. Okay, makes sense? Any question on that topic? No, I don't have any developer in the room, so yeah. Yeah? Sorry?
You said you don't have any developer.
Yeah, because usually this slide raise questions. Do you have this kind of process so you're a developer?
Yeah, but to be honest, I haven't really read that.
We do not have that. There's no way we could do that anymore. We don't do
Okay.
development.
So that's the goal now.
Yeah.
You know, you can achieve that even if you start from something where you cannot deploy. You can achieve this kind of process.
Not when you work in a big organization.
I don't know your
I
point.
mean, big, like more than 10 people.
Yeah, no, I mean Facebook does it, so it's more than 10 people. GitHub does it. GitHub is like 300 engineers, and they really do that. They deploy 20 times a day. Actually, GitHub, it's funny because they have like this chat room. So everybody's in the chat room, and to deploy, they just talk to a bot inside the chat room. They say, oh, deploy this branch to this server. And there's a bot which reads the transcript and does the deployment.
Well, not the master though.
So basically what GitHub does is, it's a bit more complex than when I showed you. It's like sometimes they are not sure of a feature. So they deploy a branch to like maybe 1% of the users. So they can test on this 1% if it's working. And then they ship to everything. But the regular workflow is to push master. So again, it's not just for teams of 2 or 3 people. It can be achieved at large scale. But you have to have a good test in place and a good rollback process and a good monitoring. And I'm going to talk about monitoring now. So advantages of those kind of process when you just ship code as it gets produced is that you reduce the deployment risk because you don't deploy a lot of stuff at once. You have the real sense of progress. So defining the done word inside an engineering team is really hard. Because for the developer, it can say, okay, I did the code, and for me it's done. But for me, in my opinion, the definition of done means that the code is in the hand of the end user, of the customer. If I just do the code and go home and the code is not in the hand of the customer, it's not done. And that's my definition. And in fact, that's the definition of this process. And as the code is in the hand of the customer or user, you get user feedback early on. So you can just ship every day and change your product and make it better. If you deploy every 2 weeks, you get feedback every 2 weeks. If you deploy every day, you get feedback every day. That's how startup can go faster than other one, because they get feedback early on. And I know if you are in a big company, that's really harder. And that's why startup win, because in the beginning, they don't have anything to lose. So they just push to production, they just push to users, and that's it. Yeah.
Is that like the same as agile development, or is that something slightly broader?
Agile development is more about how to communicate between developers and stakeholders like project management, marketing, etc. It's more like how you set up, how you do the meetings, the communication, etc. It's related to that. Basically, Agile came to replace stuff like waterfall. So waterfall is like you define at a very high level what you want to do. You write specs, and then you go deep in the technical process, and then you ship in the end. So Agile came to say, okay, we are going to do a continuous evolution of the software. And as developers, we want to be part of the spec. We want to be part of the definition of the product. That's more about that, in fact. Yeah.
If you're doing continuous deployment,
yeah.
How do you, and say you have your small team of commercial people, who are likely the ones who will receive the user feedback first.
Yeah.
How do you keep your team updated about without having them all check GitHub all the time to see what small things are being pushed out all the time?
So I assume you have a role like a product manager?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the job of the product manager.
So they would do like a daily
yeah.
push email.
Basically, you push an email, or if you're in Slack, you just say, oh, here are the new features, etc. And if you have feedback, if you have customer support, developers should be in the loop. So, for instance, you take turn. One developer, if you have a team of 5, once every 5 weeks, I will do customer support for 1 week. I will be in the loop. I will see. I will answer to users, etc. Because if you push developers in the back room somewhere and they do not have an idea of what's happening for the users, they cannot really understand what's happening. So that's really nice to just drag them and put them in front of the customer sometimes through the tool, obviously. Okay. So yeah, product manager is really important role when the startups grow. So if you have a database and when you want to do rollback, you can have problems. So basically, when you change code, you also change the database. You also change the schema. So for instance, if the database, you have a user table and you store, I don't know, name, first name, last name, email, address, etc. Maybe at some point you want to add a new column, a new information. If you want to store the phone number, for instance, so you have to change the code and the database. So adding stuff is always fine, because if you roll back the code, the column you've just added is sitting here, and it doesn't do any harm. It's okay. But imagine that we do some change in the code and we want to remove a column. So you have first name, last name, email, and you do some changes and you remove the email column. So basically, you destroy data. So when you roll back your code, you don't roll back the data. It's lost. So you have a problem. That's why you need to have in place backups for the database. You need to make sure that the database every night gets backed up, so that at any point, even if a developer implements a bug, I would say, or does a mistake, and it gets pushed to production, you can restore your data. Because in the end, if you lose everything from your database, you lose your company. I worked with a French startup which is called Roadster. So basically, they are like Airbnb for cars, and for vintage cars. So if you want to rent an old car, you can go to this website, and I can show you. It's easier. So it's called Roadster. It's a French website, and so you can rent a nice car. So for instance, if I want to rent a Porsche, an Alfa Romeo, etc., I can. Okay, it's like an Airbnb for cars. And at some point, the developer wanted to implement something in the search bar. So in the beginning, you could only search by location, but a lot of people were typing a car brand, like Porsche or Mustang, etc. And they got confused because they had an autocomplete of cities. It doesn't work anymore. Anyway, so it changed the search, and Basically, what he did is he was retrieving from the database information, sorting it out, and he started with a big list of cars and narrowing down to the cars matching what the user had put. Okay? The problem is that narrowing it down, he wrote some code he thought was just working in memory, but it was actually deleting cars from the database. So, and he didn't see that when testing on his computer. So the code got pushed, and his partner, the business guy, was like, I don't understand, there are less and less cars on the website. What's happening? And he was like, fuck, okay. So he called me, and I was going to the database and say, okay, so you used to have like 300 cars, and now there are 23 cars, and it's lost. It's really lost. So I checked the backups, because we were supposed to have put a scheduling backup, so every night, and it didn't work. It was not in place. So, so you could see the face of the guys like, okay, we are losing the company. But really happily, Heroku does backup for you without telling you. They have like a snapshot window, and if you pay more, you get a bigger snapshot window. So what they do is like they backup everything every 5 seconds, I think. And we had a window of 30 minutes. So as we reacted quickly, we send the support email saying we lost everything, and we get a backup at this time. And they say, okay, it's in your plan, it's in the free plan, so yeah, you can get your backup. And they gave me the command to run and to get back everything. So really, it was really nice to have Heroku as a hosting platform, because they already did a lot of stuff that you forget as developers. Okay, so could have been a horror story. It's a good story in the end. Anyway, backups. So backups, and check they work. Because if you put in place some backups and you never exercise them, you never retrieve them and check what's inside the backup. Basically, a backup is like a big zip file. It's a zip file with text in it. So if you never open the zip file, the day you need it, and if it's corrupted, it's as if you didn't put any backup in place. So if you have teams, if you are in a small team, tomorrow morning, ask them if the backup system is working. Okay? It's really, really important. Yeah, so this way you can roll back data if you lose anything. Yeah, so that's the command we ran. So basically, you just have one command on Heroku to schedule a backup at 2 a.m. And then every day it gets run for you, and you can roll back at 2 a.m. Okay, so even if you do something horrible with your data, you can still go back to a checkpoint. It's a bit like the code, but for data. Okay, so one important thing, so you have backup, but you also need monitoring. Monitoring is to make sure that your service is working and is always working. One way to make sure that the website works, it could be to go to the website and every minute refresh the web page and see if it's working. So it's not working because I'm localhost and I killed my server locally. Okay, so I go to the production website. Okay. So I refresh the page, it's working. And I wait 1 minute, and I refresh the page again, it's working, etc. And I can do that all day, or maybe I have better stuff to do. So I can put a service to do it for me. And this service, Uptime Robot, does it for you for free, which is nice. So basically, you can set up a ping test, and it will call your website every minute. I think for the free plan, it's like every 5 minutes, which is okay. And if the website goes down, it will send you an email. Okay? At least you are informed that something is wrong. And it's better to have a service telling you that your website is down than a customer telling you that your website is down. Okay? Because if you react quickly, maybe your user or your customer won't see it. Okay? So monitoring is really important. This is really basic monitoring. I mean, hitting refresh every 5 minutes is like really basic. you have you can do more. Sometimes when you get a bug on the server code and you want to have some reporting, so this is really tools for developers, and basically developers will get a dashboard like that, and they will report every errors happening for the user. That's what we call the 500 errors. I don't know if you've already seen it. Maybe you know 404 error. The 404 is like not found. You also have 500 error, which is like there was some problem on the server. So for you, it's just 500, and you don't know anything. But for the developer, you get some details, and you need a dashboard like that. You need some reporting. Because by default, you don't have anything. So maybe your users are experiencing some errors, but you don't get notified. So you need tools like that. So here, it's Wagon, and we've been using it. It works quite well. So there are other tools we use which are not specific developer tools, but which are really nice to collaborate. So the first one is Slack. So who uses Slack already? And what do you use it for? With your teams, or with your friends, with your family?
To notify us of like things happening within the site, so transactions or.
So you connect web services to it to have notification, okay?
To stop receiving damn emails.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, basically for those who don't know Slack, the day we started using it at Le Wagon, we stopped using email internally. It's like it completely replaces email, like 99%. And we use email to communicate with the world, like with external people. Okay, so it's like a chat. You get channels and private groups and private messages. And basically, we have an engineering module, we have an engineering channel, we have a marketing channel, we have a channel for every city, so Paris, London, etc. And what's nice is that you can chat, obviously, but you can also have bots pushing information inside the channel. So here, for instance, in the engineering channel, I have Travis CI, which pushes information like green build, Heroku telling me that the site has been deployed, etc. So when I click the merge button, I know that 3 minutes later in Slack, Heroku will tell me, okay, the site is in production. Okay? So, and everybody sees it, which is nice. They know that a new version has been in production.
How is this different from Yammer?
It's so Yammer is a website, right? Or is it an application?
Like an enterprise social network.
I think you get it as an application as well.
Okay, so yeah, basically Slack is an example, but you have HipChat, you have yeah, maybe Yammer, etc. So yeah, Slack is like the most popular right now.
I think can you share code with Yammer without getting quite funny icons?
Yeah, I mean Slack is like the most hype because when you have emojis, you have you put you have yeah, you can put GIFs with some command, etc. I mean it's like the one with bells and whistles, you know, and they are really, really good at onboarding users and getting everybody in the team using it. Yeah, it's like they are the most cool, the coolest. Yeah.
Integrated with Dropbox.
Yeah, the integrations really work well. I mean, if you want to be notified every time someone tweets about your company or mentions you, you can do it by 2 clicks. Yeah, you can do it by 2 clicks. Okay. Yeah, it's just a screenshot, but you get that, and it's really simple even for non-technical people to just add a bunch of services to Slack, and I think that's one key to their success. So yeah, if you don't know it, maybe you can register. So it's free to start. It's free for any number of users, but the catch is that the history gets cut at 10,000 messages in the free plan. So you use it, it's like a beautiful world, great. And then 1 month later, you want to go back in time to check some messages, and you cannot because you are in the free plan. And as you stopped receiving and sending emails, you don't have the email archive of everything, so you just lost the information. And then at this point, you pay. Yeah.
It's one of the ways used like for continuous testing too. So if suddenly the transactions channel goes quiet, then
Yeah,
and it hasn't been picked up anywhere else, then there's
it's kind of a monitoring tool.
sign up.
Yeah, it's a bit like a monitoring tool. Yeah, sure.
Can you do like WebExes on it? So like if you need to move beyond chat and actually like share your screen and
You can do. They just implemented calls, so you can call people directly inside the channel, and you don't have to run Skype or etc. And they bought a startup 2 years ago, which is Screen Hero, which used to do screen sharing. So they're working on that as well. But calls work really nice. You don't have to launch Skype or anything else. That's great. And you just initiate the call inside the channels, so anybody can just click a link to join, which works really well. Yeah. So yeah, we have a channel where we see applications coming. We have a channel where we see a transaction, etc. So yeah, it replaces every notification email you can get. So it goes in Slack, and everybody on the team is notified. We also get customer requests or customer support directly inside the channel. So we can comment on the customer question and then answer the customer. So it's a way of collaborating on the customer request. Okay, so one tool you need, everybody dealing with code needs, is an issue tracker or project management tool. It's a place where you fill in bugs. Every time you see a bug, you need a place to tell someone there's a bug. Okay, it is kind of obvious, but it's good to say it. Anyway, for that I will tell you to embrace simplicity. Don't start with Jira or Pivotal Tracker or I don't know any other big stuff, but don't start with that if you are just 1 or 2 guys on the weekend. Okay? Just use something like GitHub issues. If you use GitHub, you get an issue tracker for free, so you can stay inside it. That's what we do. GitHub issues is nice, but you get the issues, just a list. You cannot reorder them. You cannot assign priorities. So sometimes you feel limited. So what you can do is use Waffle, waffle.io, which is something on top of GitHub issues, and you get a board like on Trello. You know, and so basically it's just GitHub issues behind. You don't get a database, and you can move them around and get a nice workflow to prioritize items and see the evolution of your team. So waffle.io is really nice. You can also use Trello directly if you want to. I like GitHub issues because it's integrated with the pull request workflow. So it makes sense, but Trello, you can just create a board, it's free. And who doesn't know Trello here? Okay, so I really encourage you to try it. It's a tool, basically you can do anything with it, any kind of project management. You get lists, and you create cards, and you move cards from left to right, or I mean, it's a way to create a simple workflow. So here it's empty. It's not really a nice example. Sorry. Anyway, Trello is really a great tool. And in the end, if you really want stuff like that, I don't know if you like the Burn chart. No, you don't really use it. Okay. Some product managers love it. And you want complex stuff, you can move to Jira or Pivotal Tracker, but don't start with that, really. Okay, so it's almost the end. I will give you some personal feedback from experiences I had before being a CTO at Wagon. So I used to be a developer in a team of developers, in small teams, in bigger teams. And it was always the same pattern. In the beginning, everything was great. We had a great communication. The product was awesome. We had clients coming in. It was like going like an exponential curve, you know. But at some point, it was like flattening a bit. And that's when, you know, it's not the love story anymore. And what we had was a lot of meta work. So what's meta work? Meta work is like work to talk about work. It's like you do a meeting to do how you are going to work. It's like, and I mean, it's fine at some point to say, okay, let's organize, but when you do that like 2 hours a week, there's a problem in the company, and it really upsets developers the most, I think. So meta work, nobody loves it, but developers love it less. Yeah, it's really a developer's market. So developer position there are a lot of developer positions, but really people, small number of people who can fill them in. So it's really, if you look at San Francisco or Silicon Valley, if you're a developer, you can get a lot of money for positions, and you can change every 6 months, and you get a higher wage, etc. So if your developers are not happy with in your team, they will just leave, and they will be the first to leave. So meta work, please don't do it. Also, please don't do meetings with developers. It doesn't work. It's not how you talk with them. So you asked a question about agile. Agile in the beginning was a really nice movement, and then people started to try to put process on agile, like for instance Scrum. And Scrum, it's a process where we say, okay, so every morning we do what we call the stand-up. So what's the stand-up? So we stand up and we talk for 1 minute about what we're going to do today. And so everybody doesn't want to do it. People don't listen to each other. And sometimes there's this guy which talks for 15 minutes because he likes to talk. And everybody stands up. And usually you have management which doesn't stand up. Anyway. So yeah, stand-up, I don't really believe in stand-up. I saw a team doing stand-up, but I don't know the word in English, sorry. You know when you do push-up, but you stay on top? Yeah, plank, yeah. So they did stand-up like that, so that nobody can talk more than 1 minute because it's too hard to stay like that. Anyway. So yeah, you should. I mean, I really prefer to have this flow of communication in like tools like Slack, so that you stay up to date. And if you grow bigger, you need a product manager, a product owner to fill the gap and to keep people on top of stuff. But mostly, meetings with developers are a waste of time. You need to write everything down. That's really important. Even if you're in the same room and you talk, that's okay. But at Le Wagon, we are in the same room, in the same office in Paris, but we talk in Slack. And we barely talk to each other in the office. Obviously, we talk in the kitchen when you take a coffee break, but when you are working, we don't talk. Because if we say something out loud, just the people inside the room will hear it. If you say something in Slack, in the right channel, everybody will see it. I mean, people with the right permission and right scope. So if you are sick, you can catch up later. If you are working from home, you can catch up. If you are on a business trip, if you are in another city, etc., you can catch up. And that's really a matter of policy, of company culture. What kind of company do you want to build? So here at Le Wagon, we are not an oral company. We are a company where everything is written. Okay? And Edward is like in London, and we are in Paris. And we don't do meetings when we see each other. I mean, it's like we are on the same page when I arrive from the train. I have the same information as him. Okay?
We don't even talk. I don't think we spoke.
Yeah.
He came here, he set this up, I let you guys in. I mean, it's sort of, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. So if you write everything, yeah, and after we grab a beer. Yeah, still. Anyway. If you write everything, you can be asynchronous. And that's really important because when you build large company, you work in different time zones, not just 1 hour between Paris and London. I mean time zone between China and Europe, or between the US and Europe. And asynchronous is the best way to work. asynchronous for a developer is the best way to work because you get stuff to do and you do it when it's the right time. And it's really a problem when you have someone on the team who can access the developer at any time. Like they, oh, did you read my email? Or can you answer me on that? If you do that with developers, you will pull them from what we call the zone. And I'm sure, even if you're not a developer, you know what's the feeling. The feeling of the zone is the feeling where you say, oh, I'm really into it now, it's flowing. Like if you have an article to write, or a contract to write, or an email, a big email to write, etc. If you are in the zone, and if someone pass by the cubicle and say, did you read my email, or etc., it pulls you out of the zone. It's really hard to get back in. And it's especially really hard for a programmer because when you program, you have to maintain in your head a big mental state of the code. Basically, you're just building what you see and running the code in your head to understand what's going on. And you have this huge complex mental model that you've took like 30 minutes to build. And if someone pings you, you lose it and you have to build it again for 30 minutes. And it's not just a feeling. It's like, I don't remember the name of the companies, but companies did research by putting some metrics inside the software development tools to measure concentration, brain activity, code lines, number, return, etc. Basically to track the productivity of a developer. And they run some psychology tests and technical tests. And every time a developer got pulled out from the zone, it took at least 20 minutes to write another line of code. So if you have like 4 interruptions a day, you lose 2 hours. So that's why asynchronicity for developers is really important. And that's why also a lot of developers like to actually work from home. It's not because they want to work in pajamas or, work in the bed. I mean, it's nice, okay, but you do that 2 days and you don't do it anymore. It's nice because when they are at home, they are not pulled out from the zone. So at home, you need an office, obviously. If you are at home and your wife says, can you do the laundry or can you get the kids, etc., it's the same in the office. That's why people go to coffee shop or to co-working spaces. Because they are not at home, they are not at the office, and they work at the coffee shop. Okay? Yeah, that's my advice. You can do whatever you want with it. Thank you very much for tonight.